Today on Queen Me, I'm joined by somebody who's not just designing websites, she's designing new possibilities for women in business. Meesha Gerhart is the founder and CEO of Redtree Web Design, an award-winning women-led agency that's helping businesses across the country simplify and strengthen their digital presence. Now, since launching Redtree in 2015, Meesha has grown her team, built a reputation for authenticity and excellence, and expanded her focus beyond websites to the women behind the businesses. She's the host of We Talk, a podcast uplifting the stories of women entrepreneurs, and a dedicated mentor to emerging leaders in the Pittsburgh area. Today, we talk about building from scratch, growing with purpose, and how motherhood, community, and creativity shape the way she leads with vision, vulnerability, and a whole lot of heart. Take a listen. Well, thank you so much for joining us. I'm so excited to have you because I've been a fan of your work for a very long time and a fangirled about you a lot over the
I
years.
I appreciate that. I'm honestly very flattered because I fangirl about you a lot as well.
I think back often to when I feel like because I had known, of course, about you and your work, but when we had met, it was at, it was like a classic Pittsburgh type thing, right? I mean, it was at an event, and you were in one of the sessions, and it was like one of the chess sessions that I was leading, and it was just so great because uh, to have you there and be a part of that and given all of the work that you've done, especially with empowering women, and we'll get into all of that. It was just really nice to have you there and be a part of that.
Yeah, Red Chair is the organization. So Red Chair is a nonprofit that serves a lot of women in tech, especially mid-career. And I remember your speech mostly because it's hard to find women who step into their space and then like own that space and are confident in their space. And I feel like sometimes a lot of women are still a little bit hesitant. Like, there's unfortunately there's the term sort of imposter syndrome that is misused in my opinion, but it was very refreshing hearing you talk not only about chess, but just like the strategy and the intentionality upon life and even like any kind of decisions. You talking about a lot of that was really refreshing and invigorating. So instantly I was like, I need to be a part of their network. So
Yeah. Well, I'm so glad. And it's just funny how things have evolved because the first time I heard your name, it was through somebody mutual, my good friend and mentor, Audrey Russo, the head of the Pittsburgh Technology Council, was thinking about website design. And she said, well, Redtree Web Design is an amazing resource. And you had started that in 2015. We were just talking about this. You had just two people then, and now
Mhm.
you've grown and you're really a go-to source for people that are looking to redesign, update their website, and get into the roots of truly what their work is about. So I want to go back to when you started that. So can you talk to us a bit about what inspired you to launch Red Tree? What did those early days look like for you?
Yeah, so we launched in 2015, as you had mentioned. So this will be our 10th year. Hopefully, you're coming to our 10-year celebration. And anyone who is listening, if you're in the Pittsburgh area, please come celebrate. I want to give back to the community that has gotten us to where we are here. Um, so I will say that and I didn't know this term whenever I first had started, but I'm very much so an accidental entrepreneur. There was another marketing agency that I worked for, I was a partner with, and it just came to time that the owner of the organization, she wanted to chase grandbabies instead of chasing invoices. And she went to go and sell her business. She went to a couple of local agencies in the area. And after a little while, something just kind of gave me the nerve to say, like, I'd like to be considered for one of the people that are bidding in for this. And she came back immediately and said, I was really hoping that you would. I couldn't ask you if you wanted it. I really needed to make sure that like you were ready for it. So my philosophy was when I bought this, I had enough in the bank. And mind you, too, I was single. I lived in a house that was like $600 in rent, and I lived with two other guys. And so my car was paid off. I was probably eating ramen because I was, 28 at the time. Um, I had no expenses, and I just thought I got enough in the bank for 6 months of runway. If I get no business in, worst case, I go and find another job. And here we are 10 years later. I can tell you the first founding days was just simply grind. I had my nose down. I had a couple of clients that came over from buying that agency, but there was a lot of them that were sunsetting and sort of they moved on. And then I needed to start getting new people. I needed to start maintaining the people that we had, and it was just nose to the grindstone. My first hire was out of necessity. I brought in an admin because I was working so much. I wasn't actually invoicing for any of the work that I was doing. So, yeah. So, for me, as I've grown throughout the years, um, someone told me in my first couple of years to find the things that you either didn't like to do or weren't good at, and to start hiring for a lot of those. So I've kind of taken a little bit of that method, like that sort of intentionality as I've grown. These days, we're a little bit more strategic. In the last year, we've almost doubled our staff, which is, we went from 4 to 10, which isn't all that much, right, in the grand scheme of things. But every single time you add in a new person, every single time you take out a new person, it's different culture, it's different processes that you're realizing, oh, that wasn't really fleshed out. So it's been amazing. But to think back to 10 years ago when I started in the wood panel basement, we've definitely come very far.
It's crazy when you said 10 years ago, because I was like, wow, 2015, it's 10 years. That is terrifying.
That is 10 years ago. Yes. Yeah, I met a 25-year-old that was born in or a 22-year-old that was born in 2003, and I was like,
Oh God.
that's not, no, you're 3 years old. No, it's
That I still think 2007 was like 3 years ago, so
yeah.
it's fine.
There's just murky pandemic in the middle too that we just kind of sped
I would just
past. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Now, what I love about you, especially not this that you're just like amazing to be around, and you have this amazing personality that makes people want to be friends with you, right? You've built just this company culture, right? And I'm curious your perspective on this, because one of the things that was really difficult for me, to be honest with you, when I was starting growing my organization was, how do I balance this as a founder, as somebody that wants to collaborate and who values like authenticity and all these things, but how do I really build a company culture, especially when you're so used to being on your own? Like as a first starting out entrepreneur, we're so used to doing things on our own, right? How do you start to add team members? Like, what's your philosophy behind this?
I mean, we talked a little bit about the adding in the team members. That just kind of became, the technology was growing so fast. I couldn't keep up with the latest and greatest code, the latest and greatest design. So I really wanted to hire someone that was specific in that area and that they were really good at it. And they just wanted to be in that area, right? So they just wanted to design, they just wanted to develop, they wanted to do what it is that they wanted to do. And then I was shifting more towards sales, figurehead, so on and so forth. To kind of answer the original portion of your question is, um, as the founder, a lot of it is me, right? So it's leading with integrity, it's being authentic, it's thinking about my community as a whole. And a lot of those things naturally just come through with the people that we bring in, if that's being aligned. If I have a team member that I'm hiring and they're like, hey, I'm not owning up to my mistake, I'm not meeting the deliverables, I'm not thinking about my team and my clients, then that's a misalignment. I would say it's not something we've definitively put down until just recently, where we've really started to identify like core values and what I want our team to really look at, right? So one of our core values is we, not me. Another one of our core values is think strategically, act decisively. So like we've really had to, over the course of 10 years, identify a lot of that stuff. But when you're first starting out, a lot of it is just your values kind of transferred into your team. And as long as you're leading with a little, in my opinion, leading as I was leading with a good bit of humility and integrity, a lot of those things will start to come through in your team. And if there's a misalignment, there's going to be immense amount of friction. And then potentially, that person has to go, or you have to have a candid conversation of that might be a misalignment, but that's what the business needs.
I'm so glad you mentioned about core values, because this is something I think so many people can do a better job of. Because I've seen organizations talk about core values, and I'm not saying that the ones I'm about to say now are bad. We absolutely need them, but sometimes it's so broad that it doesn't fit in directly. Sometimes, like they're like honesty, courage, kindness. And
Yeah.
those are great, but how does that like how does that directly align with the work that you're doing? So I love that you mentioned your values because those are specific to what you do. What was that process like for you to come up with those core values in your work?
Oh, that was a tough. I felt like I needed to go to therapy for core values. It was really hard because I don't, I'm a pensive person and I'm a reflective person, but to sit there and think over the last couple of years, what things have we really used to define was hard. And as we were growing too, I needed to put a name to those. Um, and then additionally, I would say anyone who is like not conflicting, but um, doesn't want to do any core values, I would highly suggest that you read Simon Sinek's Why. And he talks a lot about how core values, which was the big shift for me, should be an action word. And I'm a very action oriented person. There's a difference between saying, I support women entrepreneurs versus saying, I'm going to start a podcast, I'm going to do free counseling. Where's the action behind those things? So when Simon Sinek in the book said core values should be an action-oriented phrase or term or word, that was the unlock for me that we really needed to start looking at, which is why we took a lot of our honesties. Integrity was one of ours, right? Like what are we doing with the integrity? Because there's also this huge I don't need let's say, for example, you're not a person of integrity outside of work. Don't care. You're leading with integrity inside of our organization. So it's those types of things that, to find someone who's talking about the core values that you align with. And for us, it was Simon Sinek.
I love that. I love that. And because we're on the topic of this, I do want to talk about your podcast a bit because you launched We Talk to create the space about real conversations about entrepreneurship, right? And this conversation about women in business, as I've been going through social media, spending way too much time on it as I normally do, I've noticed things, right? There's a shift. People want to talk more about women that are starting their own businesses. I
Mm,
just want to go back to the beginning when you started your podcast.
mm.
One, talk to us about why you started it, but also I want to hear a bit about how your podcast has changed your own perspective
Yeah.
about some of these common threads that you see with women in business.
Yeah, so the origin story for We Talk was really, really simple. As I was growing my business, I had a lot of people come to me and say specific questions. One of the ones that really resonated with me was, I'm the breadwinner of my house. I have kids. I have a mortgage. How do I make the shift into entrepreneur? And I was like I was living off of pizza and ramen at, $200 a month rent whenever I started. No wife, no kids. Like I had no responsibilities. But you know what? Sophia has a great story about how she made that shift and how she transitioned. She did her, what's the saying, the 5 to 9 after her 9 to 5. You should go and talk to this person. So after that happened a lot, because I love networking. I'm one of those people that like enjoy connecting with other people. And I don't look at like networking events as like a sales pitch, but just an opportunity to potentially connect. As more and more of those things happened, I started thinking, I'm just going to start a podcast and I'm going to showcase Sophia's story. So my main mission with We Talk is to showcase women entrepreneurs in order to hopefully inspire more women to start their own businesses just by hearing their story. I think especially as women, we are community, like we want someone to sort of relate to. We want to see ourselves in another person. So hearing this story of someone who left their law firm and started their own law firm, that's exactly what someone else might need to see, and it might inspire them or give them a couple of tricks of the trade. And that's the sole vision behind We Talk, is that we're just hopefully inspiring more women to start their own businesses by hearing other stories.
Amazing. Amazing. And it's really special to hear from people who I feel like oftentimes in interviews we're asked a lot of the same questions. And what I love about your podcast that will absolutely link is that you're asking different types of questions, I think, that are, really get into the base of what is fueling this movement of women leaving traditional jobs to launch their own businesses. So it's shifting that narrative, right? You're asking new questions and things that I think people really want to learn because I know if I'm listening to someone, I want to hear about what was that spark, right?
Yeah.
So can you talk to me a bit about, the shift that you noticed, right? We've talked about women that
Mm.
are launching their own businesses. So what do you think really fueled that movement? I know a lot of people say COVID, but I think it's something different than that too.
Um, I think it's, and this is my very, very, very small bubble, Ashley. After doing, over 30 different interviews and talking to women inside of my network, it's a very simple equation where women are starting to build more confidence around their skill set, and they're starting to realize that the brands that they're working for, the organizations that they're working in, are undervaluing them. They're getting passed over for promotions. They're not getting paid the same. We're starting to ask some of those questions about, like, hey, peer that is a male, this is my salary range. Where's your salary range? Right? Like, I'm not asking directly and then hearing that that person is 2 times the salary range, despite the fact of being there at the same amount of time and everything else. Like, that is something I am seeing as the base where organizations are undervaluing or overlooking a lot of women. And because of that, they're starting to see their worth and then starting a business and realizing that they can do what they're doing on their own and be even more successful and not necessarily have to worry about asking for permission or asking for that pay raise. And they also have no ceiling whatsoever. Most of my interviews, I always end with, what's one thing that you would tell another woman who's thinking about starting her own business? And almost every single one would say, just do it or do it now. Because most of the women that I'm interviewing say, I waited too long. I should have done it sooner. And I understand that there's also things going on, right? Like, you have to be able to support yourself. You have to be able to financially bring in enough money in order to sustain, basic necessities. But almost every single person I've ever talked to said, once I made that transition, doors opened up, things aligned, and, just do it a little bit faster.
Mm. So it's building the confidence too. I think so often we're like, oh, I can do this, but I think somebody can do it better. Or, oh, I can do this. Oh, but there's so many organizations or companies that also do this. We lack the confidence a lot of the time.
Yeah. My go-to strategy for that one is, what's the saying? There's like a very concise statement, but like, basically, if the, um, oh, now I want to find the exact statement. Um, but basically, like, if a mediocre white man can do it, like, you're
Yes,
doing it better, right? And
exactly.
and that's where I'm kind of tired of, um, men are doing almost less sometimes,
Yes.
or they'll get like one good ROI and they'll say, like, I can guarantee you that for for the next one or for the next client, or whatever that may actually be. Whereas women will be like, on average, I get this, and but I'm not really 100% sure. And we're community drivers, which is the other aspect of this, is we're not necessarily the confidence, but like, we're looking at the community as a whole instead of having 100% confidence in your ability. But I think that there's a way of owning the space that you've created and what you've worked really hard for, and also acknowledging the community that has helped you.
Absolutely. When you mentioned that, it made me think of when I had first started to get into, teaching chess and everything. There was this, of course, continues to be a very white male dominated space. And there was this, older white man that, you know, saw that I was teaching a chess class, didn't particularly like that, felt like it was just not the space for a young woman to be teaching chess. And he comes up to me and he's like, I can teach kids how to play chess in like 10 minutes. What can you do? And I was just sitting there like, this is such an interesting thing because, in the moment you're like, this is weird. What, like, how do I even respond to that? But as I look back at it, I'm like, being able to teach people chess in 10 minutes, is that like a flex? Like, it's also just like, it's interesting, right? How people approach things. It's like this like competition, right? And I was able to grow the confidence because I was like, well, I view chess as everyone learns differently. Everyone learns at
Right.
different speeds and everything, and it's what they're getting out of it, right?
Right.
So I love that you mentioned about that. Yeah, the having the confidence of like a mediocre white man.
Yeah.
Because
But you have to think about it too. So women will unfortunately set this bar. So I use this in a growth statement. I will shift some of my statements. I would try to meet the 10-minute marker of teaching students because a man introduced that as like that's the achievement of success in my experience. So I'll give you a prime example is like um, I needed to make $1 million. I can remember I was halfway into my business and I was like, I need to get to 1 million. I need to get to $1 million in revenue. And I remember my wife saying, why? And I was like, uh, I had no answer for that. And to your point, if we're using your same example, what if you taught a kid in 20 minutes? Or what if you taught a kid in like 10 hours, but the results were higher? So that 10-minute kid that you're teaching how to play chess might not be as good as someone who you vested an hour in. And are we looking at the final, like what is actually coming from the results of the work that we're doing? Or has someone, probably a man, created a marker of what we need, what is the level of success, and you're not looking at the residual? Like I would love to sit there and like drill deeper. One of our core values at Redtree is curiosity, and I'm always like, so I immediately would say to that man, like, all right, 10 minutes, like how many of them have actually won games? How many of them have actually won any kind of awards? How many of them have confidence in playing the game or even like doing it? So, we're looking at this marker and not the results that we're trying to achieve, because in a value alignment, I might not care about 10 minutes, but I might really care about the 10 kids that now have confidence to play chess.
yes, it's so true. And I think when I look back on that too, it's like sometimes we get into this defense mode of like, well, like a part of me would have been like, well, I can teach 10 kids how to play, like it's like that defense thing that we have as a response. But you're right, it's more layered than that. And I think that goes back to something you mentioned earlier too about women in the community, right? How we're also building community and we acknowledge that community lifts us up, right? And for both of us, I mean, mentorship has played a huge role in giving back. So I want to incorporate that into the discussion here as well,
Hmm.
because you credit your success to the community that has continued to lift you up, right? So let's incorporate that too. How has your experiences with your own community really shaped your approach to mentorship and giving back? And this entire conversation we're having about, women in business and metrics of success and all of these things.
Yeah, I mean, when I first started, I can't even tell you the amount of women that sat down and had coffee with me, had lunch with me, would give me pointed advice, or would sort of steer me in a good direction, bad direction. Sometimes I listened, sometimes I didn't. I'm a little stubborn in those aspects, but um, and I still do it to this day. Like there are a lot of people who have a higher stature, who are more successful, right, than I am, that I'm going to reach out to. I'm going to have conversations about, right? And we can exchange some tips of trades, but to give back to that, it has to come full cycle. So when anyone reaches out, and I'm a little bit of a sucker for it, but if anyone does any kind of intro, anything along those lines, I don't even really read it. I just immediately send them my calendar link and I'm just like, find a time, let's grab some coffee, right? Because people did it for me and I need to be able to do it for others. But I think sometimes it's just, especially some of the women that I mentor, it's just knowing that like someone else is behind them, right? They have the confidence in it. And I think just sharing a little bit of their story or sharing some of their struggles and giving some unique ideas or being like, no, 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 that was a horrible way that someone treated you. And for that sort of validation sometimes is all that someone needs in order to have that confidence to sort of move forward because they're in their heads or whatever that may actually be. For me, one of the things I always talk about is the community has got us to where we are today because of exactly what you were just talking about. So many people speak my name behind closed doors that I'm not in. And I am unbelievably grateful for that because I am, constantly being, getting opportunities for things that I wasn't necessarily in that room. And I try to do the same thing for a lot of people. If I'm in a room, I'm going to advocate for other women entrepreneurs, other people inside of my community. Um, but I honor a lot of that by maintaining my integrity, by doing a really good job for the people that come in, making sure that that quality is there. Because, I mean, I don't know, other cities might be different, but what people have 6 degrees of separation from Kevin Bacon, and like Pittsburgh, you have like half a degree of separation. Like you walk across the street and it's like 6 people. So in Pittsburgh, if you're not leading with integrity, you're going to fail really fast, or you have to be a really, really good salesperson. It just so happened I'm actually a little bit good at both. Um, Not even a little bit. I'm good at both. So that's led to a lot of our success. But I will not discredit the community that has helped us get here.
Mm, I love that so much. I love it so much. I want to dive into something that I know a lot of people have asked, and we had an interesting, conversation about this as well. Um, Especially after, COVID, and I mentioned this was difficult for me about, balancing everything, especially when I decided, I wanted to create a consulting firm on top of a nonprofit, right? It's balancing everything. Like, what does balance look like? So let's talk about that, right? Because this is something that women often do get asked, but what is it, what does balance look like for you, right? Because you do all of these things on top of all the things.
Yeah.
What does it look?
Yeah. So we were talking about this earlier. I don't mind answering this question, but I loathe the fact that this question is only asked to women. No, give me the podcast, give me the interview where they're asking a C-level man how they balance fatherhood and this and that. They don't. And it drives me absolutely crazy. And I have to unpack, right, why this question is being asked of most women. And that is because we still have a very large problem in the United States, in the tech design industry, right, where women are still expected. And even worse now, this was the horrible part. Women are expected to be the breadwinners. They're also expecting to be the best moms. They're expecting to be the best wives. And it's infuriating to me. I do see a very large shift, which I'm very excited about. So my mother was actually visiting in town, and we were walking around Lawrenceville, and she was like, it was really cute. I saw a young couple pushing their baby, and the dad was pushing the stroller. And then, like, she paused for a little bit. She goes, I even actually saw one where it was just the dad pushing the stroller. And I was like, yeah, yeah. I mean, my mom's 76 years old. She's of the boomer mentality of like, that was probably pretty impactful and pivotal for her to see a man pushing solo a stroller. That's not what men did. So I love this shift that we're very slow shift, very, very slow shift that we're having, where women are not expected to be the breadwinners, the moms, the perfect wives, as well as the housekeeper, as well as the budgeter. Like, we're asked this question, Ashley, because we there's a lot that's expected of us. There really, really is. The first thing that I will say, to actually answer the question is I have a phenomenal wife. I can't even tell you. She pushes me, she supports me. Um, and I support her and I push her, and we are true equals where, you know, there's things that might pull me more into work. And then so I sit down and I have this conversation of how are we going to balance it? What kind of things can I do to maybe do more pickups or something along those lines and like work late at night? But having a partner that balances all of the workload helps me exponentially. Additionally, from the work standpoint, um, I have a phenomenal team that takes things off of my plate. They actually keep begging me for more things off of my plate. So that helps me so, so much that, you know, sometimes I can take on a little bit too much, especially when it comes to the work or even when it comes to the household. But having other people that are seeing it and seeing it sort of bogged down and asking for those things to kind of be shared and mutual is absolutely huge. But the biggest thing that I will say that was a pivotal moment for me was balance is kind of like a seesaw. It's not going to be equal across the board. Sometimes I'm going to have to give more to my business, which means I have to take away from my 4-year-old or I have to take away from my wife, but I need to be able to contribute back into that. So it might be a time and a place right now. As I mentioned, we've doubled in staff. So the business is getting a lot of my attention. And as things are starting to fizzle, I've just had the realization today. I'm like, I need to create some more space for my kid over the summer, right? So I'm gonna try to take a little extra time and I'm gonna give her more of my attention. But from my aspect of, a lot of people whenever they ask about this is like almost put the big stick away and then try to make space. I'll finish on this one for this one. So I think it was Brene Brown. Brene Brown talks about every single day you're given a set of spoons. Let's say it's 10, and you choose where that energy and where that spoon goes towards. For me, I have a little post-it note right here that just says like save a spoon for Kristen and Hazel, which are my wife and my daughter's name. So I think being intentional about that stuff that I got 10 spoons. The business can take a lot of it, right? The podcast can take a lot of it, but really being intentional, they get a little bit every single day as well.
Mm, I love that. You have also just have the cutest family. Like I remember we ran into, I think we were like, it was Barnes and Noble or something. It was
It
like
was.
last week. And I was like, oh my God. It was
Yeah.
it was adorable.
Yeah.
I'm so glad that you mentioned that because it is. Sometimes you're gonna have to give more time to the business, but you
Yeah.
need to make sure that you know, really I always say too, like, you know, I can't operate very well if I just don't feel well and can't, there's some days where I'm like, I need to take a break and understand,
Mm,
you know, how I'm feeling. That's been really helpful for me too in these discussions where it's like, I can't be an amazing leader if I truly do not feel like getting up and drinking my coffee or brushing my teeth. Like if I'm not
exactly.
feeling well on a level, I can't do it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I think sometimes too, there's a conversation around that though, Ashley. I wonder what a little bit of your philosophy is of um like developing out the habits, and even if you don't feel like doing stuff, you still stick to that habit. And I know I see that more predominantly with men than
Mhm.
I do with women. Um, but I'm actually a little bit curious of your philosophy where let's say you wake up and you don't feel like drinking coffee or you don't feel like going into work. Do you stick to the habit in order to build that or
I find myself still sticking to the habit, but I acknowledge that I'm gonna like it's okay if I'm doing it slower than I did yesterday. Or if I'm looking at the
mm,
time and I'm like, this is an hour later, but I'm still doing it. One of the things that was so helpful for me, and it's funny because I started listening more to her last year. I'm a big fan of Mel Robbins. I just am. I always have been. And her thought is like, some days you just don't want to get up. You just don't want to, but you have to count to five. And then that moment's going to be the thing that's going to get you up,
yeah,
right? And that's what I remember, right? I'm like, I'm going to get up. I'm not going to feel like punish myself if I did it an hour later than I did yesterday, but I'm still going to do it, right? And I know as I'm doing it and I'm making the impact, I could be working with kids or could be, teaching them chess or talking to athletes or doing whatever. I feel good when I'm doing it. It was just that moment of like grace for yourself.
Yeah.
That's been helpful for me.
I love that because I am not practicing this whatsoever. I am very much so I feel like I'm a little bit of an old soul and I got like that boomer work mentality that like I will go to work even if I don't want to. But one thing I've been just asking myself subtly, I haven't answered it, I haven't done any practices, but it's what permission do I need to give myself to do this, to like take the rest of the day, to take the day? And again, I haven't done any of that, but I really like, your perspective on that, giving yourself that permission to, it's not going to be quite as good, or even cutting out a couple of hours earlier, whatever that is.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And speaking of, doing the work and making an impact, what are some things that are coming up for you and Redtree? I know you said it's an interesting time, staff's growing, all of these great things, but are there any new things coming up that you should
Yeah.
know about or that you're hoping to pursue this year into next?
Well, I can't be a good CEO and not drop the word AI into any kind of external interview, but in a more authentic way. So we are looking at two big things. So from Rentry side, I can remember when AI, really started becoming more predominant, more publicly known. I had so many of my staff come to me and say, like, am I going to lose my job? And my immediate response was, no, you're just going to do your job a little bit differently, and you're going to do your job like a little bit more efficiently and effectively. So one of the things that we're really looking at is how we can use AI as a tool, because again, we have a very small team and I want to be able to help more small businesses grow. So how can we use some of our years of experience to use this tool? I tell my team all the time, back in the day, people used to cut down trees with an axe and it took a really long time, right? And people, someone invented the chainsaw. And now some people can cut down trees by themselves, but most people still hire a tree cutter and they just do it a little more efficiently and more effectively using a chainsaw. So that's the way that we're looking at AI and how we're integrating that into our websites, copy creation, brand research, as well as user research. And on WeTalk's standpoint, I'm picking it back up again because I saw this horrible statistic that said of all the people getting into AI, only 30% of them are women. And I'm like, I cannot have women be behind yet again. So we're going to do a little mini series on We Talk where we're talking to women who own their own businesses around the AI space. There's someone inside of Pittsburgh. I think her name's Tara. She's doing AI automations inside of manufacturing. There's another woman named Shannon Gregg who does a lot of AI around workforce implementation and effectiveness. So we're going to start a little series about women getting into AI because, again, I do not want women to be behind yet again.
And it still baffles my mind that we are still behind. We're talking about all this progress and things that we've made, but like when you look at the numbers, no.
Yeah. And there's still C-level men talking about the girls in the room. So, yeah, no, we are women. And I
Yes.
understand if you're going to call us girls, but then you better call these men boys as well.
Boys,
Yeah.
please.
Yeah.
Please.
Uh,
We
and
and
I will say this much too, Ashley. I feel like I just spent majority of the time bashing the white men of the world. And that's not my intention whatsoever. I have a very clear passion of websites and women, right? So women in business, women in tech, right? Women growing and changing. And there are a few men out there who are allies and advocates, and they want to see just as much of this progress and change. So there's not everyone is bad is the short version of this.
it is true. It is true. But you're right. We want to keep making change. And I always
Correct.
say there's the male allies out there. Let's keep Let's
Right.
keep making that change.
Right.
Um, and speaking of, we end every episode of Queen Me with this question. I can't wait to hear your response to this. What does it mean to unleash your inner queen, and how do you tap into that power in your own life and leadership?
Being my own queen means accepting my successes as a result of hard work. I
Mm.
think sometimes
I love that.
myself and maybe even other women, we do give too much credit to the team, the community, and there again are times and spaces for that. But I feel like if we can own more of our successes, the results that we've given, that imposter
Mhm.
syndrome starts to fade away, that confidence starts to build. That
Mm.
I worked really hard for this. I got here, I did these things, I helped these people, and there are other people helping me, right? So, not
Yeah.
discrediting that, but owning your successes, truly owning them.
Oh, I love that. I love that. That's so powerful. I'm just so grateful for your work, your knowledge. You really show that business is rooted in, and I'm so glad we talked about the core values, but the values, community, really clarity that can, I think, just transform your life and really the lives of others as well.
Mm.
We'll include all of your links, of course, but I really encourage people to go to Redtree Web Design .com, look at all the services and the work. Beautiful, not only beautiful websites, but really clarity for people's missions and visions. Listen to past episodes of We Talk. You also do so much work empowering women through Chatham University Center for Women's Entrepreneurship. Wanted to give that a shout out as well.
Yeah,
Just thank you so much for all the work that you do, for your leadership, and just really being, who you are in this community. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate you saying that. Thank you.
Of course. And as always, don't forget to subscribe, to share, leave a review, because every time you do, you help someone else unleash their inner queen.